Right. I'm going to have to muck around with these computers a little bit. Excuse me. Because this is the only way I can do this. But I do have two Apple computers, as you can see. This one here, this one where I'm on now is the one that I got originally. Then the hard drive shit itself, so I bought this one. Then they fixed the other one, and so I ended up with two. But anyway, I'm glad of that now. And so now what I've done, what I want to do now is I want to show you some things. Because I want to talk about still talking about the homestead, the years at the homestead, because I came to be known as a sculptor up there, and in fact the studio lighting. Fuck, we get weird sometimes, eh? And so, this little device here just eliminates all those fuckwits you got to have in the studio. But anyway, I shouldn't stop swearing, Dennis. So I'm going to. I wanted, for a while now, I wanted to talk about sculpture, and where it all came from. And I had this other sculpture here. I'll stick it on the thing, and just for a minute. I told this story. Oh, she's too tall. Look at that. Naughty, naughty. This lady here. Oh, wonder what that noise was. So she came about as a result of. She was the first sculpture that I did that I could call a sculpture, and that was preserved. And she kind of surprised me. And I had this big idea at the homestead that I was going to sort of give it a bit more of an English feel. And I had this big idea about there was no water supply at the homestead. There was water supply on the hill that served all the taps and things in the house, of course. And we had a bore, but there was no big water supply like a swimming pool, where if the bloody place caught fire, the fire break could drop a suction hose into and squirt some water on the house. So I wanted to make a lily pond, and I thought lily pond would need sculptures like this. So anyway, and there'd been this big punch up. We got invaded by the pub at Takapau on New Year's Eve, and that would have been New Year's Eve 1977, and might have been 1978. I'm not absolutely sure anymore. I don't know how to find out. And so in this fight, I had these two guys were holding me and they were punching me. So, but there was one getting off the floor, and he was going to come at me. So I gave him a kick, and I had no shoes on, and it turned my toes back, and I couldn't walk. So there I was out on the veranda, in the weeks following this, with my foot up, waiting for it to bloody heal. Couldn't do any work. And this potter, a local potter, he'd come around a couple of times, and I talked to him about pottery, and I was not interested in pottery, but I did say that I knew about clay, because I'd been to an adult art class when I was about 12 or 13, because my father had decided I had this sculptural talent. Maybe it was one of the good things he did for me was he got me organised and into that, and because he'd been working down there on the Polytech doing something, but anyway, so I turned up and there when I was 14 or 15, I got a Venus de Milo. Was all I made out of that, a model of a Venus de Milo about this high, which my first wife threw at me one night, and it was plaster of Paris, so it got destroyed. I probably deserved it, but but actually it was quite funny because it had a piece of steel up the middle, and she threw it at me, and it hit the floor and shattered, and the piece of steel buried itself in the floor. So there was that statue going like this on the floor, and I'll never forget it. It's one of those moments. But anyway, this here was I did like the idea of the female nude, of course. Who doesn't? And it's obviously well bound up in European art and all the rest of it. So why not? And so this lady here was what came of that. And Dave Harrod, a friend of mine, who was a fiberglassing guy, he helped me with the bits and pieces I needed to cast it. And the method that I used to cast this was with a plaster of Paris mould, and then I poured the stuff in and rotated it so that it's hollow. And the last layer of that is actually got sand on it, so that if I put concrete in, it would have something to bind to. But anyway, that was the last one, first one and last one that I did like that. And then we were talking about what I should do, as a way of making money out of sculpture. And after I'd done that, it was obvious I could do it. And so people said, why don't you make some little ornaments for fairies and things like that, because there was this book around called the Fairy Book, and in it was this guy here. And so this is Puck. So I think it's meant to be a Shakespearean character of some sort. And his finger's gone now. And the reason for this damage to some of this stuff is that this was my original. It was the first handmade one, right? And the reason for that, I know that, is because of the holes in the bottom, because I would screw it down onto a board so that I could make a mould on it. But unfortunately, when the homestead when we got thrown out of the bloody homestead, or evicted from the homestead, all of my stuff had to get packed up in seconds, and that's one of the few of those fairies that I ended up with. And we sold a hell of a lot of these. I don't know, they were probably $12 or $15 in the shops, something like that. It wasn't much. It might have been $20 in the shops. But, I actually did give one of these to Muldoon, and he kept it on his desk. And, keeping all of the guests under control, because this little guy's going like this. Anyway, so there's enough of that. And so then to go along with that, it was called a Fairy Book. So I made this fairy, she's got a lovely face. How I sort of, actually it's a bit blurry in that picture. I can't see it. But she's got a very pretty face. And it's sort of the realization that you could make something like that accurately out of clay and then make a mold on it. And so you see, this one was one that had popped out of the mold, and it wasn't very good. So it would have been a reject, so we didn't finish it. But it was the only one that I ended up with. And you can see that she's got part of the slag from the moulding on the bottom. And I was obviously going to do a repair because there's a big air bubble there. And so that had been left lying around for a day when we needed one. And we sold hundreds of these. They were so popular, it was just silly. And so we used to make them with wings that were slightly opaque. And so then around the same time as that, with the help of John Harding, I also did these. Now this is one of a group which we called the Vogue Collection. And so these were sort of, I was very interested in Erte at the time. And so these were a bit of a lift from his designs, because I'm not a clothing designer, and so these sold very well in New Zealand, but we used to finish them in black and white. And here's another one, and the other, there's two more, but I haven't got copies of them. And you see, these are both masters. So these were the ones that we took all the molds from. See the holes in the bottom again, and the same in this one where they've been screwed down. So that's and so this means that they're basically perfect. But you see, this has got damaged in the process, and the other hand's disappeared, which is a shame, really. But I can replace those so that we can cast from these again if we decide to do that. But these were very popular. We literally sold hundreds of them, and we followed that with Marlene Dietrich, and I'll show you Marlene Dietrich again. She's in the other room. I'll just go and get her, and put all these on the floor where I won't lose them. Won't be a moment. So there's a purpose to all this, and I'm up to 10 minutes already, bugger. So this is Marlene Dietrich. Now, I had a thing about black and white movies at the time. I just like, because, I don't know, it's like these pieces here in white. I do like them, I like the way that, because it's like a flat white, and I like the way that it shows off in the shadows and, blah, blah, blah. Shadows become important in sculptures. And so, but there was this sort of very famous photograph of Marlene Dietrich, and I just basically copied it. But she was sitting on some steps. I just put her on a stool, and you see the stool is part of the casting, and this one here came back from Christchurch after the earthquake, they actually cost more. I got about 30 of these back from Christchurch after the earthquake, because we sold 1,200 of these around the country, and so Minsons used to sell them in Christchurch, and they were, I don't know, $300 or something back then in the sort of 90s, and at that time I had this guy Richard Thomas working for me. He was very reliable. He just went to work he lived at the homestead, went to work every morning on time, no matter what the household was doing, turned up on time, did the work, took 10 minutes for smoko and 10 minutes for and a half an hour for lunch, and did a proper day's work. So I always tell people that, because I need to tell him that I appreciated that, because a lot of people sort of took advantage of my stupidity with staff, if you know what I mean. But anyway, there she is. So this supported the homestead for a long time. It was very important to the homestead, because it was literally bringing in several $100s a week, and got us paid off the mortgages, got us out of trouble, all that sort of stuff. Very important, very important. And so then the other one that I want to show you, and I want to talk about the process, the sculptural process. Because, aside from, I never had any real training. I had some sort of schoolboy training, but I never had any real training, and certainly not training about the way to approach making a sculpture. And so then there was this. I've got to be careful of this. These are quite fragile. Now, this piece of sculpture is something that I'm very proud of. And it's going to be too difficult to make it any bigger here. And so these two people are cast separately, and they are the two principal dancers from the ballet company at the time. Their names were Adrian Matheson and Martin James, and so I went and talked to Chris Mangan, who was then the manager of the ballet company, told him what I wanted to do, and I think it was after I did Muldoon. And Chris was very helpful about all that, and I sort of said that all I needed was photographs and measurements, but I needed a lot of photographs. And Trevor Hyde, who's gone now, poor Trev, he's a lovely man, he came down and did all the photographs for me. He's a really good photographer. Him and Gary Fox used to work together, and Gary Fox is still around. He's a lovely guy as well. So I was very lucky with some of my friends, very, very lucky with some of my friends. But so what I did with these in the end was I made them in clay, and I separated them, made them in resin that I could work, as in work the surface of it, because this stuff is harder than marble. This is resin, but it is harder than marble. It's got a beautiful feel. I mean, a lot of people will I don't know, sneer because it's because they are made of resin, but resin is a great product. It does the thing beautifully. The feel of it is lovely. It just feels really nice. Feels like marble. But so I cast these out of clay. So obviously they come out with a surface more like this, because this is as smooth as you can get. The clay really, so that this wasn't really worked up very much after it was cast. But so then what I had to do was spend a lot of time with sandpaper and scalpels and whatever, working each one of these pieces, and then assemble them again. So his arms are made separately, so they both put on later. And what I wanted to do when I talked to them about what I wanted them to do, I wanted it to be a sculpture that showed a certain amount, because these two are a couple, and I just wanted to have it show a little bit of intimacy, if you know what I mean. And so, but I'm very aware from having watched a little bit of ballet at the time that a ballet dance seems to be a series of poses connected together with a little dance across the stage, So they dance across the stage and they go da 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 bong, and this is it. And so I had to catch that moment, if you know what I mean. But we had to make that moment up for this, and I wanted, because they were a couple, I wanted him to be holding her as he might his partner, if you know what I mean. So I wanted his hands to be you could say in control of her, but actually being protective of her as well. And once he gets his hand into this area here, it's getting a little bit intimate, if you know what I mean. But it was to try and give it a little bit of mood, if you know what I mean. And so I don't know what they thought of that particularly. I don't think I said it to them quite like that. I don't think she was terribly chuffed about doing it, because she thought the ballet company. He told me that she thought the ballet company were using them in a way that they shouldn't be using them. But this remains, and they've got a copy of it, and so the ballet company. And so I'm sure that now they would see this. They would see this with some pride. I hope. I sure hope, because they were beautiful people. And this is a reasonably good. It's a very good rendition of them. I put a hell of a lot of time into this, because once making them in the clay was easy, but bringing them to this standard so that they could be cast, working in this resin with sandpaper and scalpels and the odd little tool, which you've got to be very careful of using electric tools when you're trying to get something as fine as this. And so, every little detail, I got every little detail. And, when I look at it now, I'm very pleased and proud with, things like these little, because they're wearing tights, these little things that appear in the tights and the belt and whatever. And, I've been tempted to dress these, dress the sculpture, and do a version of it with tutu on. Don't know. It'll never happen. I'm too old and too tired now. But I think the thing I want to say is that this took me several sittings with these guys, and they weren't sitting still. They were moving all the time. And me and Trevor would be down there with the camera, and I'd be. I talked more to Trevor about what I was after than I talked to them, and to me it all sounded a little bit fake, because I wasn't used to making those sort of observations about what I wanted in a sculpture, but I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted, and I did want something that was quite intimate. I wanted him to be reasonably relaxed, and I wanted him to be showing her off. Boom. And so there she is, and she's absolutely gorgeous. What a stunning figure! What a beautiful face, stunning figure, and I just wanted him to look proud of her, and I think he does. So that worked. And so I've got a. The other thing I thought I might show you is this. There's two photographs here. I'm going to see whether you can see this properly. The shading in this is not good anyway, because it's not the best one. Now Trevor took this photograph. We went back with the finished sculpture, and we managed to get them to pose for it again. And so it's just unfortunate that that the light on this was not good enough to get a decent picture. And so here's Trevor's photograph of it that we used on a brochure, and there they are on the stage, the two of them, down at the Wellington Opera House, I believe. And so here is our blurb that we did at the time. I don't know if you really felt inclined, if I hold that still, you could probably pause that and read some of it to get a bit of an idea of the thinking at the time. And you'll note down the bottom there's the photograph of the homestead, and that's because I wanted to make the point that that this thing had come out of that artistic sort of era or a homestead, and you know, because it just seemed to me that it was a unique time in its history. You know, I mean, it's one thing to be a restaurant or something, that's all lovely, but I mean, it's something else again to be. And here's a photograph of me working on Rob Muldoon, and so when I was younger, a little bit better looking, and so I know I'm going on and on. I don't care. I decided that I was just going to make this for what it was worth, and you know, after this, so I'm going to wind this up soon. 25 minutes will be enough, and so here's another photograph, and this is of those other two pieces, and they're all slightly different than the ones I just showed you, because I did another version of them for this company in the United States called Design Gifts International, and something went awry with all of this. We spent quite a bit of money trying to get it set up to be sold in the States, and there were the other products that they did for us. And so the clown there on the bottom, the guy, is done by John Harding. The girl was a picture I found in Playboy magazine, and the others are ballet dancers that just came out of my head. And so, you know, the brassy sort of colours, because that's what the guy that was running that big company in the United States thought they needed. And so while I'm at this, I might as well show you this, because you can pause this and read it if you want to. I've called this my history of heroic failures. And so you'll be able to pause that. It looks clear enough. And the thing about the historic failures is, and the way that I see all this, is that, you know, I was full of ideas, and I did really want to I did the Tikawiti Shira. I should have shown you a picture of that as well, but you know, most people would have seen one. There's got to be one here. There's Kath Tizard showing off the small one alongside the big one, and so you can. He's big enough for me to sit inside his head, and so you know, I knew that I could make a big sculpture, but I wanted to do better. I mean, there's another photograph of me just sitting inside his lower leg, the casting piece of the casting, just as it's not a very good picture. I shouldn't have done that. So sorry about that. But so having done that the big Tikawiti Shira, I knew the process that I needed to follow, because I'd worked that out myself, to make a very much bigger sculpture. And I had several ideas that one of the people who approached me early in the piece was Danivik. They wanted a big Viking, you know. So I did a couple of designs for a Viking, and they talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. But like some towns, all they ever do is talk. And, you know, I worked out, I mean, I was prepared. That Tikawiti Shira, I got paid $60,000 for that. I mean, what a screaming bargain that was. You know, Tikawiti's famous for that bloody sculpture now. 60 grand. I worked out the price of it by working out. I mean, I had a workshop. I didn't have to worry about that. I had the homestead, so I didn't have to worry about a place to live. And I knew I had to buy the materials, so all I did was work out the cost of the materials, which came in at around about, you know, there was the materials, there was transporting it up there, and there was sort of craning it into place and all that sort of stuff. And I think it sort of came to around about $30,000. So I thought, right, well, I should have $30,000 surplus out of that, so that'll be enough for me. So I'll call it 60. I should have called it 100, at least, but I didn't. In fact, it was I knew afterwards I started I should have called it 120. But what I did know is that I could make a very big sculpture. Still, I could probably do it still, but I'd have to do it supervising other people now because my health's gone. But I wanted to make had this idea about a golden girl. The idea of the golden girl was that she would be something that, and I've got a picture over here. I should show you. Well, if I'm going to waffle on about it, I might as well show you. The thing about the golden girl, in my mind, was that it would be a sculpture for New Zealand, which is a place out in the Wop-Wops, a long way from anywhere, and it's always good to sort of it's always good to publicise yourself, and I thought that a golden girl was a good idea as a nude. It would have to be a classy nude, and here she is here, and so and the idea was to make her, bigger than the Statue of Liberty, and so. And as a millennium thing, instead of what are we going to have for the millennium, a bloody party or something that's going to still be there in 100 years' time. And so that's what I came up with. And I'd done the sculpture. I had the sculpture here, but I never cast it. And then, and so, this was in the Hawke's Bay paper. But, people sort of looked at this idea like I was nuts. And I kind of knew that I was being considered as nuts. And that's all right, I guess. But so, and then at the same time, because I seem to have the ear of some of these people, I came up with this idea as well, which is, I'll hold that there for a moment, so that if you want to read it, you can pause it and read it. But this was an idea that I thought was valuable, that would have made money, and would have provided something in Wellington that would have been really valuable on into the future, So if we'd put it up 20 years down the track, this would have been a major tourist attraction in Wellington, as would that golden girl if it had gone on Mount Hakarangi or various other places. And, the Maoris up there at Hakarangi, they like the idea. But, you've got to get money. And you sort of got to get the agreement of, and you've got to stop the stupid media from saying dumbass things about it, because they just do. They don't. The media don't. Most of them. I don't know where they get their education from, but they certainly don't seem to have any imagination. And so what do? You need to have a positive reaction to what you're trying to do. And I think it was just too big for the brains of some people. They just thought, how the hell is anybody going to do that? Do we believe in it or something? But I would have thought the Tigawiti Share is a demonstration that, for Christ's sake, they built the Statue of Liberty in France and moved it all the way to the United States, and now it's one of their most valuable icons. It's been there for hundreds of years, I can't remember what year they put up. It's a couple of 100 years ago. And so we had an opportunity then. I was crazy enough to have a go at it. I was fit enough to do it. I had the knowledge that I needed to do it. I was prepared to bring in the other people that was needed to actually make it all work. And look, seriously, if you can take a couple of ballet dancers and do that with them, if you've never done it before. And so I believed in myself, but New Zealand basically didn't. And so the arts fraternity in New Zealand, nobody ever came near me from the arts community. They just looked the other way. And I'm never really quite sure why, because I think that maybe it was all just too big for them. They certainly didn't, imagination, arts people, the arts administration people, forget it. They would have the imagination of a parking meter. So on that note, it's coming up for 30 minutes and I need to get off this and give you a break. And thank you if you've watched it to here. And this is an important part of my homestead story, and I'm going to go on from there to talk about some of the social things that we did there, and I'm going to talk also about ballooning, because we took up ballooning as well, and we flew balloons off the lawn at the homestead quite a lot, and Hawke's Bay became known for balloons with Andrew Livingston. So thank you What's the date today? The date today is the 14th of October, 2022. I'm still here.